Hello and welcome back to Azamon, or welcome to Azamon. This is my first video that I'm going to be doing, and it's a top 10 list for Magic the Gathering. And it's a list that I visited a while back on the Pass a Turn YouTube channel, but I thought I'd redo it because we've had a plethora of awesome sea creatures over the last couple of years that have definitely made it into this list as a result of that. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and hit the little bell notification if you want to be notified of any more weird lists that you may come across on this channel. So this is sea creatures. Now, sea creatures are massive Cthulhu-esque monsters that live in the sea, obviously, and they cause some absolute mayhem and disruption when they do enter or whether they stick around. They are very, very dangerous, very, very lofty mana costs, and some of them are very dependent on islands, which we'll come to expect later. But yeah, still one of my favourite creature types of all time, and I'm glad to see that Wizards are sort of giving it some more love in that sort of area. So let's start off with two honourable mentions on the list. So let's go to the list now. So first of all, we have Rexial the Risen Deep. Rexial the Risen Deep is a 6 mana value. So his mana value is 6. Mana value has come in to replace converted mana cost. So his mana value is 6. So 3 generic, blue, blue, and black for a legendary creature Kraken. First appeared in Thinking Domino. I think it was, I can't remember when he first appeared, but I think Dominaria is the most recent printing of Rexial. So he is a 5/8 Island Walk, Swamp Walk, so he can't be blocked if the defending player controls an island or a swamp. So in EDH, if this guy is your commander, he's going to be able to get in some unblockable damage because a lot of people are going to be controlling your islands and your swamps and dual lands and what have you. So you're going to be hitting people with this. And the great thing is, whenever Rexial the Risen Deep deals combat damage to a player, you may cast target instant or sorcery card from that player's graveyard without paying its mana cost. And if that card will be put into a graveyard this turn, exile it instead. So you get to nick other players' spells that have been cast before. And this is great if you hit like extra turn spells, huge sort of cyclonic rifts, and all that sort of stuff. So it's a great card, but it doesn't really make it into the top 10 because it's in Dimir colours. So, Dimir colours are not really sort of tailored for Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, and Serpent play. But I just thought I'd mention it because it is a fantastic card, and one of my close friends, Tom, has always wanted to build a deck with this. But it is just one of those decks that is very sort of reliant on what other players have, which is a bit of a shortfall for Dimir. Obviously, Dimir cares about cloning, utilising other people's graveyards and such with Rexial, which is why it only makes it into the honourable mentions. So Rexial the Risen Deep, would love to hear your thoughts on commander decks that you may have built, or deck lists that run Rexial in the 99 or what have you, or even if it's maybe a modern deck or some sort of other format, let me know, because I'd love to see some lists with him at the helm or playing a pivotal role in the deck. So that's Rexial, the Risen Deep. The next honourable mention is Stormtide Leviathan. So a fantastic creature, but it sometimes can go against you if you don't have the board state to compensate for its downside. So Stormtide Leviathan is an 8/8 Island Walk creature, and its mana value is 8, so it costs blue, 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 and 5. So very, very high mana value. And it simply says all lands are islands in addition to their other types. And then creatures without flying or Island Walk can't attack. So it's a bit of a flavour fail because all of the other sort of Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and sea creatures and serpents and all that sort of stuff, not all of them do have Island Walk. And I think that should be maybe something that appears on all sea creatures is Island Walk, because they are the absolute epitome of big sea creatures, and they dwell in the water, so they must have Island Walk. And Stormtide really, really does sort of rely on other creatures having Island Walk or flying. But I mean, if you're running a sort of Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, Serpent deck, you're not going to not going to have many flyers. They're all going to be on the floor or in the sea in this particular sort of thematic sense. And as a result of that, I think a lot of sea creatures should have Island Walk, but they don't, which is a shame, which is why this only appears in the Honourable Mentions list, because not all sea creatures have Island Walk. So if you don't have any flying or Island Walk creatures, you just can't attack. You can attack with Stormtide, but you can't attack with anything else, which is a bit of a shame. But Stormtide Leviathan is brilliant for locking boards down for players that don't have Island Walk or don't have flying. But if they do have flying, it doesn't really do much. So it's very, very sort of conditional as to what can happen with this card. It can either be an absolute blessing or it can be an absolute curse. But still, the artwork is absolutely awesome, and it's just a throwback to older times, M15s, when it first came out. And I remember getting this card in a sort of pre-release draft. I think it was a draft that we did, me and Josh, back in Bristol. And it was an absolute house in that sort of environment. If you got the mana to cast it, then players were out of the game at that point. They didn't have flyers. So yeah, just a very, very sort of nostalgic and awesome card, but it can go against you in some cases. So let's get on to the top 10. So the first card in the top 10, so this is number 10 in the list, is Shipbreaker Kraken from Theros, the original Theros block. So this is a mana value of 6, so blue, blue, and 4. So it's a 6/6 Kraken, so 6/6 for 6, pretty good. But it does have Monstrosity 4. So if you pay the Monstrosity cost, blue, blue, and 6, it can become monstrous. So you can do this at any time. It's an activated ability. So this creature becomes monstrous, and it gets 4 counters, so it becomes a 10/10, which is brilliant. So a massive, massive creature. But when it becomes monstrous, you tap up to 4 target creatures, and those creatures do not untap during their controller's next untap steps for as long as you control the Shipbreaker Kraken. So it permanently ices 4 creatures, and then can hit someone in the face for 10 after those creatures have been iced and can't sort of block or untap. So it's very, very good. It counts as removal in a sense, counts as a sort of mini board wipe, or just to ice the defences for your Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents to swim through and eat people. So yeah, Shipbreaker Kraken is awesome, and it's had some great effects when I've played with it, which is why it makes it into number 10. Number 9 is Scourge of Fleets. So this is one of the cards that cares about the number of islands you control. Now, these cards would probably be higher up on the list if it wasn't to do with just the amount of islands you have. So, spoiler alert, there are some creatures on this list that do have green and blue in them. And you don't really get the effects of these Krakens and Leviathans which care about the number of islands you have if you're running sort of dual colours. So I have had some commander decks. There's one up here, Voda, the Rising Deep, which you'll see on this channel at some point as a deck tech, which cares about just mono blue islands matter. And this is one of those cards. So Scourge of Fleets, it's got a mana value of 7, so blue, blue, and 5, and it's a 6/6 Kraken. But when it enters the battlefield, return each creature your opponents control with toughness X or less to its owner's hand, where X is the number of islands you control. So if you're running mono blue islands, just big sea creatures, islands, and interaction, this is going to come in and basically board wipe your opponents, because you're going to have loads of islands out. Obviously, you're paying 7 for this creature, so you're probably going to have 7 mana out. 7 islands out. So each creature of toughness 7 or less is going back to the hand, and that's creatures your opponents control. So it's not even your creatures. It's a one-sided board wipe for mono blue, and it's absolutely fantastic. If you're running dual colours, the sort of effectiveness of this card sort of goes down a bit, because obviously you're not going to have just islands in play unless you have a Stormtide Leviathan out, which obviously makes all of your lands count as islands. So if you can make all of your lands islands, then brilliant. But it just seems like a bit of a workaround if you're not running mono blue. But Scourge of Fleets in a mono blue deck is a one-sided board wipe on a 6/6 body, which is just fantastic. So you will come to see that a lot of these sort of Kraken cards do care about islands. Which is why, again, this is not sort of further up in the list. But yeah, it's a solid number 9 spot there. That's Scourge of Fleets. Next we have number 8 is Cataract Leviathan. So this does a similar sort of thing. So this is converted mana cost, or mana value, sorry, this day and age. Blue, blue, and 6, so 8 mana value for a 5/5 Leviathan. And when it comes into play or when it enters the battlefield, return all other non-land permanents to their owner's hands. So this comes in and basically cyclonic rifts for everything apart from the Leviathan. So the Leviathan stays, and this just rifts all other things back to opponent's hands, which is brilliant. Especially if you've got a Vadalkadori or some sort of flash enabler. This is basically a cyclonic rift on a creature, and it can also be reutilized with its unearth effect. So you can pay 6 and a blue to return this card from your graveyard to play, and it gains haste, and remove it from the game at the end of turn, or if it would leave play, unearth only as a sorcery. So yeah, you can also reset the board again with this if you unearth it later, which is brilliant. So it does have some sort of double utilization on the card, which I think is really good. Cataract Leviathan has come in multiple times before and just reset the game and sort of reset the sort of power at the table. So it's a brilliant card, and I'm always happy to see that come out because it just resets the game, as I said. So solid number 8. Number 7 is... whoops, sorry, I skipped forward a bit there. Number 7 is Trench Gorger. So this is just a fantastic creature. Every time this comes out, it has been an absolute menace to deal with. It becomes an X on its head as soon as it comes into play. So yeah, mana value of 8, so blue, blue, and 6. It's a 6/6 trampler. And then when it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for any number of lands and exile them. Then shuffle your library. If you do, Trench Gorger's power and toughness each become equal to a number of lands exiled this way. So by the time you have the mana to play Trench Gorger, you pretty much have the mana to play every other card in the deck. So what you want to do is when this comes into play, just exile every single remaining land in the deck, which will basically make Trench Gorger about a 25, 26, 26. But even as high as a sort of 30-30 sometimes. Trample as well. So this becomes just a huge target as soon as you rip out all those lands. And obviously, even if it's removed afterwards, you've ripped out all of your lands, so you know that all you're going to be getting in mono blue is just gas for the rest of the game. You're not going to be drawing dead islands later on, which is brilliant. So yeah, Trench Gorger is always a huge threat when it comes out, which is why it had to make the list. And the artwork by Hideaki Takamura is just absolutely awesome. Proper menacing, big Leviathan fish. So yeah, that's number 7. Number 6, I may have spoiled it for you just a moment ago when I skipped forward, but it's Serpent of Yawning Depths. So Serpent of Yawning Depths was from the new Theros Beyond Death theme booster packs, and this is a brilliant card. So this is a enchantment creature, Serpent, and its mana value is 6, so it's blue, blue, and 4, and it's a 6/6, and it simply says, Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents you control can't be blocked except by Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents. So I think Wizards did have some sort of plan for this tribe, and obviously you will come to see the plan realised at the number 1. But it's just a brilliant card for this tribe because it just means that all of your creatures just can't be blocked except if the opponent is running Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents as well, which is probably not going to be the case. So yeah, just a fantastic card for just making all of this tribe unblockable in the deck that you're running them. So yeah, and obviously Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents are normally huge creatures. So yeah, you're going to be able to get some serious damage through with them when you have the Serpent out. So yeah, fantastic Serpent to make the list. Next we have the Charix, the Raging R. This is number 5. So this is on here sheerly because of the artwork, the flavour, and the absolute tenacity and audacity to release a card like this. So this is a legendary creature, Leviathan Crab. So it can be your commander if you dare it to be. The mana value is 4, so blue, blue, and 2 for a legendary creature. It's a 0/17. So it can basically block Emrakul and survive. So that just shows you the sheer scale of the beast. And it literally is just an island with pincers. And you can see that on this particular artwork that I've got on the screen here. That is by Kekai Kotaki, I believe. Forgive my pronunciation. I am studying Japanese, but still the pronunciation isn't there. But this is the best artwork. This is the pre-release promo. Not pre-release. No, you get it in a fat pack. If you buy a fat pack or bundle, as they're called now, showing my age there with a fat pack. If you get one of the bundles for Zendikar Rising, you will get one of these cards, and they are just fantastic. I just absolutely love it. Haven't even read out his text yet. So, spells your opponent's cast at target Charix, the Raging Isle, cost two more to cast. So if you do want to try and remove this thing, you do have to try and pay extra for it. So if you try an Assassin's Trophy this thing, it'll cost you 4 rather than 2. So it does have some sort of pseudo protection, pseudo hexproof on there, because it just makes it harder to remove. But it's a brilliant card. If you pay 3 generic mana, Charix gets +X, -X until end of turn, where X is the number of islands you control. So again, one of those Leviathans that care about the amount of islands you have. So if you're running this in a mono blue deck, it's going to be brilliant, because obviously you can dictate its what sort of buff it gets from the number of islands you have. So you wouldn't really run it in any other deck apart from mono blue, I don't think, because you really want to capitalise on the number of islands you control. And again, you probably could run this as a weird commander as well, which I'd love to see. So if you have a list for Charix, I'd love to see it. But yeah, just one of my favourite cards as of late is Charix Raging Isle with this artwork. It just really just represent the scale of the thing, and it's just good to see some huge sea creatures coming out of Zendikar's oceans, which is brilliant. Because Kiora, obviously the Merfolk Planeswalker from Zendikar, is known for summoning huge behemoths from the sea, and it's just good to see that Charix is one of those huge behemoths rising from Zendikar's oceans, which is lovely. So that's number 5. Number 4 is Voda, the Rising Deep. So this is the commander deck that you will come to see on this channel at some point. I'll do a deck tech for you. It has been updated since my last one on Pass a Turn, so yeah, you'll come to see that again at some point. So Voda is a mana value of 8, so he costs blue, blue, and 6. And he's a legendary creature Leviathan. He's an 8/8 from Dominaria, and it's an uncommon creature. So yeah. It has a kicker cost of blue and 1, so you may pay an additional blue and 1 when you cast a spell. So you can pay basically blue, 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 and 7 to cast this for 10 mana value. And if you do cast it for the kicker cost, when it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, return all creatures to their owner's hands, except for Merfolk, Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents. So this is really, really high up on the list, because it just makes a great commander for this sort of strategy. If you're running sort of Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents, you've got a one-sided board wipe in the command zone, which is just fantastic. And mono blue is probably the way to go if you're going to be running sort of Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents sea creature tribal. I would recommend going mono blue. There are a couple of Simic ones, as you probably know, coming up on the list. But I really, really do think this is the best commander for mono blue sea creature tribal, because it's just a one-sided board wipe in the command zone that will just open up your opponents to just be swung at with huge beasts. So I've played it to devastating effect, and it's just a great deck. You know, you chuck a lot of mana rocks in there, to be fair, to get the mono blue ramp, but it's one of my favourite cards, one of my favourite commander decks to play, and that's Voda, the Rising Deep. So has to be high up on this list. Coming in at number 4. Number 3 is Lorthros, the Tidemaker, the only octopus on this list. And I think the only legendary octopus so far in Magic the Gathering's history. And it's a quality card. If this goes off, you're pretty much taking someone out of the game. If the opponents allow this to go off, they're pretty much the writing's on the wall. So Lorthros, the Tidemaker, is a legendary creature octopus, and first seen in Worldwake, I think. It's this actual artwork is the commander artwork, but it's the Worldwake as a little sort of hedron symbol. I think he first appeared in. So yeah, the mana value of Lorthros is blue, 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 and 5. So that's 8 mana value, and of course it's an 8/8. And whenever Lorthros, the Tidemaker, attacks, you may pay 8. If you do, tap up to 8 target permanents. Those permanents don't untap during their controller's next untap steps. So yeah, if you get an attack through with Lorthros, you just literally pay 8 mana, tap all of their lands down, and they're just not taking any more turns. So Lorthros is absolutely devastating if left on the board. And I actually did... I didn't record it at the time, but me and Josh went to play the Gaming Den on the Pass a Turn Versus series, which you can see on the Pass a Turn channel. But Lorthros came out in a unrecorded game and just wrecked some serious havoc. If Lorthros is not dealt with, he locks up and takes over the game very quickly. So it's just a fantastic card. If you can get there and you can pay 8 on the attack, do it. Because it just shuts down the opponent that you're attacking. It really does. But it does become a huge target as a result of that sort of utilization. So definitely watch out. Definitely try and get Lightning Greaves or sort of Swiftfoot Boots on Lorthros ASAP, because you want to make sure that Lorthros is protected. This is a deck that I've always tried to make. I mean, I've got a Slin Voda mono blue deck, so I could sort of switch out the commanders for Lorthros, but I just still think that Slin Voda is just the ultimate commander for mono blue sea creatures, but Lorthros is definitely in the 99 of that deck, because it's just devastating if you can get it off. So number 3 goes to Lorthros, and that is the last mono blue creature on this list. So what's coming in at number 2? What do you think's coming in at number 2? Let me just take a quick drink while you figure that out. Number 2 is a creature from a Commander product, but then reprinted in Double Masters, I think. So that is Arigmathes, Slumbering Isle. So this is a fantastic card in general. It doesn't actually lead a Commander deck anymore. It actually appears in my Damia Sage of Stone deck as like an alternative sort of threat win con. But it's just brilliant. Let me just read it out for you first, and then I'll explain where it appears. So this is a mana value of 4, so green, blue, and 2. So Simic and 2. It's a legendary creature Kraken. It's a 12/12, but it enters the battlefield tapped with 5 slumber counters on it. And as long as Arigmathes has a slumber counter on it, it is a land. It's not a creature. Whenever you cast a spell, you may remove a slumber counter from Arigmathes. You may remove a counter. And it taps to add green-blue. So it taps to add Simic. So it's brilliant because it's ramp. So I used to have a commander deck with this, and it's brilliant because it's ramp in the command zone if you do run it as a commander. But I don't have it as a commander anymore. It does just sit in the Damia Sage of Stone deck as another huge threat that they have to deal with. But it's just a fantastic card because it obviously opens up green and blue if you run it as your commander. Again, a lot of the Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses and what have you do care about the amount of islands you have, so you can't really have those Krakens in there if you're going for a sea creature tribal deck. So I wouldn't recommend using Arigmathes as sea creature tribal. I would recommend using Arigmathes for just big mana magic with green and blue stuff, good stuff. But yeah, it's a fantastic card because obviously it counts as ramp if you are running it in your command zone. You play it, you obviously get your green and blue next turn, so you're basically casting 7-8 mana spells on turn 5. So it's pretty good. It ramps you very, very well. And again, when you're casting loads of spells, it gets slumber counters removed, and it can just come out of nowhere and be hitting people for 12 commander damage, which is always good. You include things like your Rogue's Passage, your Whisper Silk cloaks, and all that sort of stuff that makes him unblockable. And just swinging in for the victory is always a good strategy with Arigmathes. And of course, obviously, the Freed from the Real Pemin's Aura combos for infinite green mana is always good as well. So yeah, it's just got a lot of utilization, the card, but comes in at number 2 because it's just a fantastic card in general, and it can just win games out of nowhere. And I still wouldn't recommend it for a sea creature tribal deck, but in any other deck, it is just awesome. So that's Arigmathes, Slumbering Isle. A lot of keen memories with this card, and probably one of my favourite cards printed within the last 2 or 3 years. But there's only one spot for the number 1. And I think at this stage, everybody knows what this card is going to be. And I, a couple of years ago, was asking for Wizards, please give us a new legendary Serpent that can just claim the throne of sea creatures. And we got a legendary Serpent in Zendikar Rising, and that was Verizol, the Split Current, but it was garbage. It only cared about kicked spells. I don't even have an image to show you because I just couldn't be arsed with it. But the number 1 slot goes to the new card from Kaldheim, and that is Jorgmundir himself. That's Koma, the Cosmos Serpent. So a mana value of 7. So 3 green, blue. So 7 mana in total. It's a 6/6, and it cannot be countered. So it's brilliant in the sense that if you spend all of your mana on it, it cannot be interacted with. It does come into play. They can't be countered. There's nothing they can do about it. It's easily removed, to be fair. So you want to make sure that you shroud it up, hexproof it up as soon as possible, because when this thing is allowed to sort of operate, it can just get out of hand. I'm sure you've probably seen the Command Zone episode with Koma the Cosmos Serpent just wreaking havoc with Jacob Bertrand from Cobra Kai. I think that's his name, Jacob. But it's just absolutely outrageous. So yeah, it can't be countered. And then at the beginning of each upkeep, create a 3/3 blue Serpent creature token named Koma's Coil. So each upkeep, they get a 3/3 blue Serpent creature token. And Koma can sacrifice another Serpent to tap target permanent. Its activated abilities can't be activated this turn. Or he can sack a Serpent to give itself indestructible until end of turn. So it does have a form of removal, it does have a form of protection, and it just pumps out a board state every single upkeep, which then also feeds into the Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus and Serpent theme, especially if you're bouncing things with Voda or Whelming Wave. All of that stuff will not affect you because they are Serpents. So it's fantastic. It's a brilliant card. Again, it doesn't really fit as a sea creature commander, because green and blue is not really the sea creature thing you want to be going for. You want to be going for the mono blue, as I said, for the other interactions. You could make a sea creature deck with Koma at the helm, but I just don't think it really lends itself to sea creatures. Because as we saw in the gameplay from Command Zone, you want to be copying this with Sakashima of 1,000 Faces. You want to be copying this with stuff that is where the legendary rule doesn't matter, so you can just keep getting loads of Serpents and all that sort of stuff. So it's pretty ridiculous, and it's the Serpent that we've all been waiting for a long time. And I did call this in the Pass the Turn podcast episode where we talked about sea creatures. This was before Kaldheim was released, and I said Kaldheim does have in its lore, Norse mythology in its lore does have a giant serpent that sort of circumnavigates the entirety of the realms, and Jorgmundir was its name, and Koma is basically the Jorgmundir of Kaldheim, and I'm so glad that prediction came true, because the serpent, the legendary creature Serpent, has definitely lived up to its name, and we finally have a ridiculously amazing sea creature, albeit not made for sea creature tribal, although you probably could, but it's just a fantastic legendary Serpent that just absolutely wrecks havoc, which is just brilliant card. So yeah, let me just go back through the list here. So obviously we had Koma number 1. Number 2 we had going back the wrong way. Number 2 we had Eryximethese, Slumbering Isle. So Eryximethese and Koma could feature in the same deck together. We've got Lorthros the Tidemaker, just a brilliant card for locking opponents out of the game if you've got the mana to pay for it. We've got Voda, which is basically a one-sided board wipe for sea creature tribal decks, which is brilliant because you have access to it from your command zone at all times, so you can play it whenever you like. Whenever the board is really becoming a bit of a threat creature-wise, you can just get rid of them all, swing in for the win. We have Charix the Raging Isle, which is just a brilliant flavour win, just a massive sense of scale on the artwork, and it's just cool. And again, it interacts with the number of islands you have, which is very sea creature-y. Serpent of Yawning Depth just makes all of these creatures on this list unblockable, which is fantastic. We've got Trench Gorgeou, which is just a huge creature that comes in, rips out all of the lands from your library, and just becomes a massive tramply creature that has to be removed, otherwise it just spells death for the table. We've got Cataract Leviathan, which is a Leviathan that can bounce things, all non-land permanents, twice, because it enters the first time, bounces everything apart from itself. If it dies, you can unearth it and bounce everything again, so it's just a great tempo card for mono blue. We've got Scourge of Fleets, which again is another one-sided board wipe for the amount of islands you have. Anything with lesser toughness than the number of islands you have gets wiped back to the to their hands, which is lovely. We've got Shipbreaker Kraken, which is a massive threat when it becomes monstrous, becomes a 10/10, and again, it just locks certain creatures out of the game until it's dealt with, which is always a good tempo play again. So a lot of these Krakens, Leviathans, etc. are good tempo plays. They do stall the game up a lot, which is what you want to be doing when you're playing this sort of deck, because you just want to be building your own board state and icing other people's. And then we had our honourable mentions. We had Stormtrooper Leviathan, which is brilliant, massive creature that comes in, locks up the board, but can sometimes lock you up as well if you don't have the Island Walk to support it, or flying to support it. And then we have Rexial, the Risen Deep, which is just at the back end of the list because it's in Dimir colours. So you do have to be running black and blue. To be fair, there are quite a few Dimir creatures that care about milling, like Nemesis of Reason, I think, is one of them, which is a Leviathan horror. So you probably would see play in some sort of mill deck, but again, it's not really on the flavour of Krakens, Leviathans, Octopus, and Serpents. But I thought it was worth a mention because it's obviously a legendary creature. It's probably going to have commander decks built around it, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this card and how it can be utilised. So that is the top 10 sea creatures list as it stands in 2021. And I don't think we're going to see many sea creatures appear now for a while. I think we've had, obviously, Coma was the big reveal in Kaldheim for us lovers of sea creatures, but I don't think we're going to get many more now for a while. Obviously, we've got Strixhaven coming up next, which is the Harry Potter universe, so there's not going to be any Krakens, Leviathans, Octopus, and Serpents there, I don't think. But I am hoping for a big spider in Strixhaven, maybe a rip-off of Aragog. Who knows? But then we've got Dungeons and Dragons, the set coming up, so I don't think there's going to be many sea creatures there. And obviously we've got Innistrad after that, and Werewolves and Vampires. So I don't think there's going to be many sea creatures now for a while, which is why I thought this list would be worth revisiting again. But if I've missed any of your favourite sea creatures, I'd love to know what they are. So drop a comment in the section below, and please make sure, if you did enjoy this video, make sure you like and subscribe to my new channel. This is Azamon, and hit the little bell notification if you want to be notified. And check out all of my other social links in the description box below. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, and obviously YouTube. Haven't sorted out my Twitch schedule yet because I'm very much still just in the sort of beginning stages of this channel. Yeah, just thought it would be a cool list to bring you as it's one of my favourite tribes represented in Magic. And yeah, stay tuned for more weird lists, weird tribes, weird questions that need answering, and all sorts of other geeky and other tabletop content. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we will see you on the next one. Thank you very much. Peace.